Rumors are starting to swirl around all-pro safety Justin Simmons potentially landing with the Indianapolis Colts. So what's the latest on Simmons and the Colts, and how are things going at Colts camp? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host here at Horseshoe Huddle and my partner in crime, Drake Wally. Drake, we honestly we were kind of, I would say, spoiled in a sense where there really wasn't any huge rumors going around this training camp. There wasn't any huge storylines. We were really focusing on what was going on the field until this week, when rumors are now very heavy about Justin Simmons and the Colts' interest in bringing in Justin Simmons to this defense. And really, it would solve all of the issues that the Colts are having currently at the safety position. But there's a lot of fake rumors out there, so it's kind of hard to decipher maybe what is true and what isn't. But what we will confirm is that Justin Simmons and the Indianapolis Colts, the interest there is very real.
Yeah, and it would just be, like you mentioned, a perfect fit given what they have going on right now. And we'll dive into it a little bit more, but it's not going to break the bank. It's obviously not going to be $3 million up to $5 million like, Quandre Diggs was, because this guy is actually coming off of a Pro Bowl season last year. So we'll see, man, but it just continues to get more and more hype around this whole rumor. And now you've got it kind of narrowed down to a specific area of the NFL. And a little handful of teams that could hypothetically get this guy based off of some stuff we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. So tonight we are going to talk about all of the latest surrounding, surrounding Justin Simmons and the Indianapolis Colts, and really give our thoughts on if we think it's actually going to happen. Plus, there's a lot to get to from Colts training camp. We haven't talked to you guys since last Thursday. There has been, I think, 3 practices since then, so we got to catch you up on everything. Talk about Anthony Richardson, Latu, the wide receiver battle, all the other position battles. There's a lot to talk about tonight, so it's going to be a jammed-packed episode. The chat already kicking off. We have the CFO Patrick in the chat. Good to see you, my friend. He put this on Twitter or X earlier. We're talking about the Justin Simmons rumors are heating up, and if you don't know, there is a Hawkeye gif out there. This says, "Don't give me hope." Go look at Patrick's response. I think it was under your post, Drake. Fantastic use. But yeah, we're going to talk all about it here. So good to see you. Stats Matt is in the chat. He's saying I should have skipped tonight so I have something to listen to during my wife's surgery tomorrow. Well, hey, first of all, prayers up to Stats Matt's wife. Let's hope that goes well tomorrow. Get that surgery and it comes out of that successful. But I'm glad you're here, Stats Matt. You've missed enough this summer. Come on, buddy. Let's get to that participation up. Sean Cartwright is here as well. As always, thank you so much. Richie Dyer says, I don't see that as a Ballard move. Well, we're gonna have to see. It's gonna be interesting to kind of dissect this. Ballard hasn't, but it made moves like this before. But he also has, as I can see Patrick Wire saying, like with Stephon Gilmore was really late in free agency. And just because the Colts haven't really signed anybody maybe big in free agency, they've certainly traded for guys to make big moves. They signed Phillip Rivers. That was a really big move. Traded for DeForest Buckner, traded for Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan. Some of those moves worked out really well. Others didn't, but that's life in the NFL. But before we get started, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN, at Colts on _SI. Caught myself there on
We're
X.
Still getting used to it.
We are. And then subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Go ahead and hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, or like tonight when we had to change our schedule around. We had the meet and greet last night in Westfield, so we're live here tonight. So make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss an episode. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you're listening to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe. Give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. And Rich Wheeler saying, hoping for a live breaking news signing like the Flacco signing. Yes, that was an all-time episode where the Joe Flacco signing broke when Drake and I were live, and we kind of had to scramble around and give our literal live reaction to that without even being able to kind of think and digest that. If the Justin Simmons signing happens when Drake and I are live, it'll be a little bit different reaction, I think. But Drake,
yeah, a little more excited.
Right. Let's dive into it. Justin Simmons to the Colts. Is it a possibility? So this all this kind of took off yesterday morning. When Ben Albright, who is someone who is very connected in the Denver area, very connected with Justin Simmons in his camp, was asked about Justin Simmons and why he hadn't signed yet, and he responded to that person saying that Simmons has been fielding multiple offers, just waiting for the right deal, wants to join a contending team, but Albright said that he expects Simmons to sign probably this week or very, very soon. And he mentioned AFC South. So immediately, which team in the AFC South has the biggest need at safety? The Indianapolis Colts. And in part, Drake, you really sent the kind of to the Twitter world ablaze with your article of all of the Colts on the verge of getting Justin Simmons. But and then as we've been able to learn and talk to different people that we know that are closer to the situation, and I was finding this out yesterday as well. You can ask Stats Matt. I was kind of texting him about it, but from everything that I found out, yes, the Colts and Justin Simmons have been in contact, and talks have progressed farther than just the initial stage of interest, though they have gotten pretty far along in talks. Now, am I saying that there's going to be a Justin Simmons signing? No, because as we've all seen, these situations are very, very fluid. But Justin Simmons has talked the talks have reached, I guess, further along than just the initial "are you interested" stage. We'll put it that way. And from the Colts side, the Colts are very, very interested in Justin Simmons. So when you look at this, and then you look at potentially other teams in the AFC South, it's not the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans just went out, signed Jamal Adams, signed Quandre Diggs. They're basically getting the safety duo that was in Seattle last year is now in Tennessee. They're not in the safety market. The Jacksonville Jaguars today just signed Adrian Amos. They are no longer in the safety market. So really, it's between the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. Now, there are a lot of writers and journalists that do cover the Houston Texans that say that the Texans are denying this, saying they're happy with their safety room. We have that to go off of. But behind the scenes, I'm hearing a little bit different. I'm hearing the Texans are interested in Justin Simmons. So take that for what it is. Obviously, it's kind of like his word against someone else's. So, but I've heard that the Texans have reached out to Justin Simmons and are talking to him about potentially coming to Houston. So that really kind of sets things up between the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. And that's I think kind of where we're at right now. The Colts do have more cap space, and Justin Simmons would definitely be a starter. He'd be a starter really anywhere. But the Colts have a bigger need at safety, certainly, than the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans with Jimmy Ward, they just drafted Kalen Bullock in the second round. They have Jalen Petrie, who's been primarily used in the slot this offseason with Houston, but he's an option there at safety as well. So everything, if you're looking at the AFC South, the team that is the best prime to get Justin Simmons is the Indianapolis Colts. So Drake, I know you wrote multiple pieces on this for horseshoehuddle.com yesterday. If you haven't checked it out, please go ahead and do so. Go to Horseshoe Huddle and read all of our coverage on this situation. But Drake, can you give me your thoughts? Just give me your thoughts on what Justin Simmons would mean to this Colts defense, and really just how Justin Simmons being Indy, how would it affect this team's chances not only for a division title, but potentially to go further than that?
You're getting a guy who forces turnovers. I mean, I think he had 3 interceptions last season, which really helped get his Pro Bowl, hit the second one of his career. You're talking about a guy who is big, athletic, fits that kind of safety that I think Ballard really wants, which is who they wanted Cross to be at this point. Is that athletic safety, that guy who just can make plays and uses ridiculous athleticism mixed with intelligence and recognition and just being able to have that on-field awareness, which I think is what Nick Cross lacks. I remember talking to Jake Arthur at our get-together thing at Urban Apples, and he said something very brilliant. He's like, well, it really does come down to, are they going to give up on trading, give up on this investment of trading up to get Nick Cross? And I really think that they want to hold on to that as much as they can, but I think that the writing's on the wall. And I think that if you sign him, you're getting yourself an immediate starter. I don't think that there's any question about that. Simmons is going to play free. Blackman's going to play strong. And then Cross, who's still young, 22 years old, can sit there again. Hopefully he's just one more year off and can rotate in kind of like he did last year. Because remember, he played 292 snaps last year. It seems like he played more, but he did not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it was Gus Bradley's comments yesterday were very, very telling when he was asked directly about the free safety battle and Nick Cross in particular, and why there hasn't been a concrete starter yet. We have seen Nick Cross generally, as or progressively as camp has gone along. Nick Cross has gotten most of the first team snaps. And when I was there yesterday at camp, really, I think Nick Cross took all of the first team snaps. However, he was a strong safety. They had moved Julian Blackman to free safety. So definitely something interesting there. But Gus Bradley, when he was asked directly about the free safety spot and why they haven't, or why they don't know exactly yet who a winner would be, he basically said because no one has separated themselves. And it's really true, because until yesterday, Nick Cross really hadn't made any big plays in training camp. I mean, he was just kind of there. And if we haven't, if this safety battle wasn't something that we were actually paying attention to, you really wouldn't know that Nick Cross was out there on the field. And that's, I mean, that could be a good thing as far as he's doing his job, but I think he needs to do more than that. There just needs to be more of that out there. If he really wants to solidify this spot, he needs to separate himself. And when we're talking about, it's not like he's not separating himself from Justin Simmons. He's not separating himself from Ronnie Harrison Jr. and Rodney Thomas II, guys that are genuine backups. So that is what is concerning. And when we're halfway through training camp at this point, and for the team that has such high expectations for the season as the Colts do, you can't be messing around with that spot, especially when you look at the schedule and you see the gauntlet of quarterbacks that the Colts are going to have to face this season. You need somebody on the back end that is going to be up there. And that is why I think, if the Colts even have a chance to get this done with Justin Simmons, they got to go all in on it. Now, I'm not saying go ahead and pay him $20 million a year. That is absolutely irresponsible. However, if you have to go out there and overpay, if Houston's in it and Houston's offering, a 2-year, $20 million deal, $10 million a year per, you got to up the ante. You got to offer maybe 2 years, 12 million or 22 million. You got extra million a year, 2 years, 24 million, extra 2 million a year, up the guarantee by a couple million, something like that. Because this move, I think, is just too important, because without this move, there's just such a gaping hole in the secondary. And I'm a huge fan of Nick Cross as well.
Of course.
But the way he has played, Drake, I mean, and you've seen him too out there. There hasn't been anything that makes you look at Nick Cross and say, I am comfortable with him as the Colts starting free safety, strong safety, wherever, because there's a lot of unknown there. Sure, he is young, hasn't gotten a lot of playing time, but at the same time, he just hasn't done anything to separate himself to make you confident that he would be able to go out there and be the right choice for the Colts at safety.
Yeah, and when you look at Cross, you've got everything is there athletically, physically. He's got all those gifts. He stands at about 6 foot, and he weighs like 210 pounds. I mean, this is a big dude, all right? And he's also so young still. But it's really the on-field communication that's the issue. I mean, if you look at his numbers, you look at when he was on the field, he was efficient when it came to stopping the run. Anytime they did rarely send him on a blitz, he was efficient in at least putting some kind of pressure on the quarterback, and he wasn't the worst coverage safety. Okay. It's just there were certain plays where they were so damning to the success of the team,
Right.
where the communication was so absolutely trash and it was involving Nick Cross that you have to say, damn it, dude, you got to get off the field.
Right.
All those skills that you have, they don't matter because you're in the wrong place.
Exactly.
Like he's putting himself in a position to lose before the play even gets snapped. So I think that it's experience. I think he's also super young still. But man, you are going into year 3, and those expectations, they're starting to really gain weight, and he's losing clock here. And I think it's not the end of the world for Nick Cross if Justin Simmons gets signed. Okay, I really don't think it is. Again, because he's so damn young.
I agree. Shout out to the first super chat of the evening, the CFO himself, Patrick. Thank you so much for the super chat as always. And Patrick is speaking some wisdom here. Yeah, Drake, take a drink, buddy. But Patrick saying, I don't even understand why Bradley is entertaining the thought of putting Blackman at free after he had his best season at strong safety. Just sign a guy. And Patrick, I completely agree there. I really do. And I think that's what we've all been clamoring for the past couple of weeks. And I do think it obviously takes two to tango. The Colts can't just go out there and sign a guy willy-nilly. This isn't Madden. There is some negotiating that takes place. And there is truth to the fact that Justin Simmons is being very deliberate and very patient about this. And I think he can be, because he is an all-pro talent, a 4-time second-team all-pro. He's gone to the Pro Bowl twice. He can afford to pick and choose where he wants to go. And I think the best offers that he's currently getting right now are from the AFC South, from the Colts and from the Texans. So that's where it's coming down to. So again, he's weighing his options. I know the Colts are very, very interested. So I think, for the Colts' sake, you just hope that the offer that you have is good enough, or that Simmons will at least give you an offer or a chance to match anywhere else that he is looking at. So thank you again for the super chat. Really, really appreciate it. Patrick, you're one of the goats here. And Stats Matt says Simmons is an immediate impact, even if he loses a half a step. He's a game changer, kind of like JT last year. 90% JT is better than 90% of running backs. 90% of Simmons is better than 90% of the free safeties. Completely agree. And it's way better than anything that the Colts have on their roster. And again, you don't want to move, if you can help it, you don't want to move Julian Blackman from free safety to strong safety. He had his best season of his career at strong safety. You want to leave him there and build on that, not switch him to free safety just because you don't have a very good free safety and then you still have a hole at strong safety. Sure, Nick Cross might be able to play strong safety a little bit better, but is he going to probably play as good as Julian Blackman did a season ago? I have zero confidence in that. That's why this is so crucial. And sure, there are some other safeties out there on the free agent market that if the Colts don't get Justin Simmons, they could sign, but they're not going to have the same type of impact that Justin Simmons would have day one, because you're getting a starter at free safety. Anyone else, maybe you get the start, but they're probably coming in as competition. Justin Simmons comes into the Colts as one of the Indy's top defenders from day one.
Yeah, and real quick to clear up just a little bit, it might be fluff. Who knows? Sometimes when coaches are talking to the media, they're not going to give you a directly true answer. But I think Gus Bradley's a pretty straight shooter, and he got asked about Julian Blackman playing free safety, and in short, he basically said it's about personnel combinations. They were like trying to see kind of how different combinations fit different situations. But what that still translates to me to is that we're seeing, if potentially Nick can make a step forward at strong safety. It just sounds like they don't know where to put him. And this goes back to what Andrew has been saying, is that while they've been saying, we want to make Nick Cross into the guy that you can put just about anywhere. I think he's the player that, while he's got all those athletic traits, his on-field intelligence needs to be directed toward one freaking position. You got to keep this guy in one position. You can't keep bouncing him around like Ronnie Harrison Jr. out there. So I think that there's so many different factors to this. Do they think Cross is a long-term answer? Do they think he can make that step that he needs to maybe halfway through next season behind a guy like Simmons? I mean, there's just so many factors that are outside of just let's get Simmons in here to replace Cross. There's a lot of things going on here.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it as well. Austin Charlin asks, why do you think Ballard is always scared to pull the trigger on free agent signings? I don't think that's necessarily the case, because again, as Drake was just saying, there's a lot of factors that go into this. Number one, I mean, it takes two to tango. I think people forget that a lot of times coming to Indiana and coming to Indianapolis isn't maybe the most attractive thing. A lot of times players want to go to the LAs, go to the Florida, the teams in Florida or over in the big cities on the coast. That plays a factor into it. Other times it's that players want to go home. Like in the Daniil Hunter situation, the Colts offered considerable more money to Daniil Hunter this offseason than Houston did. It didn't matter. Daniil Hunter wanted to go and play for his home team in Houston. That matters. Also, the Colts don't have, while we all think that Anthony Richardson is going to be a fantastic quarterback, he hasn't proven it yet. You have to have a proven quarterback. A lot of times that matters to players. And then again, I think going away from kind of the player aspect of it, it's just the philosophy for Chris Ballard to not go crazy in free agency. He would rather build through the draft. And I mean, while it drives fans crazy sometimes, and I do realize that a lot of times Ballard will leave a hole here or there, it seems like, and sometimes, maybe more times than not, it does come back to bite the Colts in the butt. But at the same time, if you look at all of these teams that go out there and spend a ton in free agency and are just constantly pulling in names, those teams rarely win. Winning March is way different than winning in January and February. Winning in March and April doesn't guarantee that at all. And most of the time, like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who go out and spend millions and millions of dollars on free agents every single year, doesn't really work out. The best teams are the ones that build through the draft and grow their own talent and re-sign those guys. You look at the most successful franchises in the NFL right now, the San Francisco 49ers, the Kansas City Chiefs, who are the best team in the NFL right now, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles do make moves here and there, but most of those guys they drafted. That's what the best franchises do. That's what the most successful franchises do. They don't go out there and pick different players. So, and Chris Ballard has made, maybe you don't want to admit it, he has made free agency signings this year, because if the Colts didn't re-sign Michael Pittman and Grover Stewart and Kenny Moore, fans would just be as upset as if they didn't sign other outside free agents, because if those guys are gone, that leaves holes as well. So it's not scared to pull the trigger on free agency signings. I mean, he just has his philosophy, and I think he could do a little bit better of filling some holes with free agency, maybe a guy here or there, but to go out there and wanting to just sign every free agent, that's not how you build a successful team, and it's backed by history that's not how you build a successful team.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at their cap situation right now, they're never in cap hell. I mean, that's one positive. As I think they're ninth in the NFL and available cap at like $25.9 million right now. But I think that the criticism for Ballard comes in a situation like this. If this deal doesn't get done, I know that there's always, like I mentioned, like Andrew reiterated on, there's always factors. Maybe Simmons is like, oh no, you guys have the largest contract, but you don't have enough guaranteed money. There's so many different things that can happen here. But on the nose, if he doesn't get this done and he goes over to the Houston Texans, who I know that they don't look like they need safety right now, but Jimmy Ward played only 10 games last year. Jalen Petrie had no turnovers last year. They still drafted a safety. They clearly said, we feel like we need some help. So if they land him, or somehow the Jaguars land him, oh man, I mean, the Colts will need to fumble around for a solution. So I really think that in this situation, this is where Ballard's saving of all the money should pay off, and he should fork it over so that he can get Simmons on the squad.
I agree. Now I think we got to move on to training camp. We've been
Oh yeah,
talking
this
about
isn't just
Justin
about
Simmons.
Justin Simmons,
Yeah,
is
not
it?
about
That's
Justin
right.
Simmons. We do have training camp going on. Before we do that, I do want to highlight a couple of comments, Drake. We've got Eric from Facebook saying, sorry for not sending stars, but just want to let you all know, Horseshoe Huddle, you guys are beast and love being able to watch the updates you share. Much love and apologies for not being able to donate to your podcast. Y'all rock. Thank you so much. Don't worry about donating, man. We appreciate just your support and watching the show. Really, really appreciate it. But we do have the CFO who loves to donate from YouTube, and that's Patrick. Patrick saying, hot take, 2025 first rounder will be the top tight end. A second rounder will be the best remaining safety. Patrick, I don't know if that's really a hot take. I mean, I was actually talking to our other writer, Sean Ackerman, yesterday while at camp, talking about looking at the tight end room because Jelani Woods still hasn't kind of ascended, and we really don't have we haven't really seen a breakout tight end for the Colts yet. That 2025 very well could be a tight end in the first round to really solidify that top tight end spot early, because this 2025 class of tight ends, it's another good one. So that very well could be a possibility with Mo Cox in a contract year, Kylan Granson in a contract year. It very well could be a tight end draft, especially now that we know that the Colts wanted to go up and get Brock Bowers with that number 6 pick that Adam Schefter talked about, and we got it confirmed earlier this week that it wasn't for Roma Donzi, it was for Brock Bowers to go up and get number 6. So Drake, tight end at the first round. I know we're months away from the draft, but if no one really separates themselves in the tight end room, like a Jelani Woods, a Drew Ogletree, a Kylan Granson, I mean, first round pick could be tight end.
Yeah, and it's really something that I feel like a tight end one, a clear cut tight end one, could be, the one last catalyst that could take this offense to the height that Shane Steichen wants, because he had that with Dallas Goedert in Philly. So I think that helps any offense when you have a clear cut tight end one. So we'll see, man. Like Andrew said, if none of these guys can elevate themselves from the other, and you have another repeat of 2023 where I think all 4 guys had all 5 guys had like 72 catches or something. Mm-hmm. There's a repeat of that. Fully expect a tight end to be drafted because it's a pretty good class for 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick, thank you so much for all of your support, buddy. Really, really do appreciate it. But Drake, let's give the latest updates from Colts training camp. Of course, we got to start out with Anthony Richardson. And guys, to be honest with you, the past three practices or so for Anthony Richardson haven't been his best.
No,
but again, that's not telling everyone to panic and that Anthony Richardson's going to be a bust. Let's add some context to that. So Anthony Richardson so far throughout training camp is 50 for 77 in the 11-on-11 sessions, which equals about a 65% completion percentage. He has 5 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions. That's only in the 11-on-11 period. He has quite a bit more touchdowns in the 7-on-7 period. We just don't really keep track of those. But again, adding context to this, Drake, kind of like we talked about last week. A lot of these passes, it's not dink and dunk passes that he's 65% on. The Colts are really continuing to push the ball down the field, and the deep ball, taking shots are still a priority. They have been since the beginning of training camp, and we've talked about that. It's very intentional by Shane Steichen and this Colts offense to really test those deep shots. I even wrote about it this past week that Anthony Richardson thinks they can be extremely successful with the deep ball, and they're going to cut him loose. They know what they have at quarterback, and they want to be explosive on offense. So that is why they're really trying to get this honed in and really try to practice those deep shots. I think they really feel like they've got the short stuff down pat pretty well. It's the deeper stuff that they want to practice, and they want that deeper stuff to be a vital part of their offense this fall. So I kind of agree with the approach to really attack when you can here in training camp. That's what training camp is for, to test things out and to just get in the flow of things, especially when you have a young quarterback that's adjusting to the NFL and as something as explosive as those deep shots.
Yeah, and we've talked about it ad nauseum on this program. When you hit a couple of those deep shots, man, it really sets just the defensive game plan, it potentially can set it ablaze. I mean, and I know no Colts fan likes to go back to this, but it's a great example. After Nico Collins torched the Colts in Week 18 on that first play from scrimmage, I think the Texans had, everything else after that point, I mean, Collins just tore him up and he was the only real threat out there. And it was just because after that, I mean, the Colts, you're looking at, well, now what's next? So, I mean, it really just sets the tone for all those underneath, throws that Andrew was talking about, the stuff they've got down pat. If they can start hitting these deep shots, man, it's just going to open up everything else for the rest of the game plan and make the offense move a lot better.
Yeah, so I would say that the passing efficiency in the last few practices has certainly gone down.
Yeah,
but the big plays are still there. When we're there at practice and we're tweeting out what we see, you see a lot of our tweets where Anthony Richardson hits Josh Downs for a 20-yard gain. He hits Michael Pittman for a 30-yard gain. Adonai Mitchell for a 30-yard gain. Like, those are explosive plays. How many of those plays did we see last year from Gardner Minshew? Not very many. So that's definitely going to be a big part of this Colts offense. But we're also seeing his legs be put to use. Drake, like yesterday in practice, not a very good day for Anthony Richardson throwing the football. Had some accuracy issues. He's been kind of underthrowing some footballs, was intercepted by Nick Cross yesterday. But at the same time, the Colts really focused on red zone periods. He still had 2 touchdowns with his legs, and they weren't like the defense let him walk it in because they couldn't touch him. No, they were 2 legitimate touchdowns by Anthony Richardson with his legs. And our sister pod, Locked On Colts, kind of talked about this, but it kind of just shows the floor of Anthony Richardson, where even though if he doesn't have a very good day with his arm, he can still impact the game in a positive manner with his legs. So that's what makes the floor for Anthony Richardson really so high, because if he's having an off day in one aspect of his game, he could potentially have a really good game in the other aspect, which makes it's not so like all or nothing for a pocket passer or strictly a runner. Anthony Richardson really is that true dual threat at quarterback, that he can attack you in multiple ways. And while you may be able to stop him throwing the football, you still got to be able to stop him running the football. Otherwise, he can win that way as well.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what we said about a long pass player, like hitting in the vertical passing game, a couple big runs from a quarterback, especially that is as terrifying in size as Anthony Richardson, moves like this guy, that really opens up kind of in a similar fashion the rest of your game plan too, because then you can kind of get him back into the rhythm of throwing with some underneath throws, some easy completions. Steichen is going to have contingency plans for a guy like Richardson that is still developing, that if he goes out there and it's halftime, Colts are down 17 points and he's thrown 2 picks, 5 for 14, he's going to have contingency plans to get him back on track, and they're probably going to feature him using his legs. So, I mean, Richardson is developing, people. He's only going into year 2. He's only got 4 NFL games under his belt, 17 total, including college as far as starts. So he's still working on things, but I will say that completion percentage, kind of like you mentioned, is akin to throwing the ball deep with more 50-50 shots.
And another guy that's developing right before our eyes is Adonai Mitchell. We talked last week how Mitchell was really looking good in the one-on-ones, not making too many plays in the 11s, but it was more Alec Pierce who was making the plays in the 11s. I think that's changed this week. It hasn't changed where Alec Pierce isn't making plays. It's just Adonai Mitchell is now starting to make plays in the 11-on-11 session. And every time Adonai Mitchell goes up against Jalen Jones, man, it's a sight to see, because Jalen Jones is a physical cornerback, but Adonai Mitchell with his route running ability has definitely got the better of Jalen Jones quite a few times. So Mitchell has made a couple of really nice plays over the middle. There was one point on Sunday where he burned Jalen Jones on a move, and it would have been a touchdown, but Anthony Richardson slightly underthrew him. Mitchell had to kind of slow down for the football and ended up only being about a 30-yard gain. But if Richardson hits Mitchell in stride with that 4.3 speed, it would have been about a 75 or 80-yard touchdown from the rookie. So Drake, we're starting to see it. The more reps that Mitchell gets and how how close he is with, I mean, and he's been tied to the hip to Michael Pittman Jr., to Reggie Wayne between every single rep or every time he comes off the field or different sub packages go in, he goes immediately to Reggie Wayne and is asking him questions about how he just did. So this kid, you can just see the want to and the obsession with trying to get better in his craft. He's really locked on and trying to get as much advice from Pittman and Wayne as possible. But Drake, you're starting to see it. We're going into week 2. We're about halfway through training camp, and slowly but surely, Adonai Mitchell started to make more and more plays in practice. It's going to be interesting to see if he can translate that onto the field here throughout the preseason.
Yeah, and it's exciting when you have a draft pick that had the importance when he was selected of Adonai Mitchell to the Colts, because you needed a receiver. Oh my God, Alec Pierce isn't cutting it. Not only did they get one, they got two a couple rounds later with Anthony Gold. But when you talk about Mitchell, his athleticism is off the charts. His route running is off the charts. His explosive factor as a receiver is off the charts. Okay, now he's not going to. I don't think he's going to be that muscle you out of space 50-50 ball guy. I don't really think that's his thing. He's not going to be that guy that's going to plow through a couple tacklers for a yard or two like Pittman does. But look, he's probably also not going to be that blocker that Pierce is. All right, but what you are getting is, as far as a pass catching weapon, man, if he hits his stride, that could be potentially scary. I mean, this is a guy that's got a lot of hype. Okay, and he's showing it in camp, and he's showing it against Jalen Jones, who, even though he's a 7th rounder, I don't care, man. He started last season, and he looks like he is a starter now, and he's out there roasting him. I mean, Jalen Jones isn't just letting him do that, by the way. So it's like, you got to be impressed, and it's got to get you excited. I still think that you're going to see him and Pierce split snaps at first, but you got to be excited, man. And maybe this is a Josh Downs situation, like we've said a couple times. Maybe by week 1, he's starting and Pierce is behind him on the depth chart, getting less snaps. Who knows?
And it's just good to see that Mitchell, he's not having an up and down camp. The trajectory is kind of just it's kind of linear. It just keeps climbing. He started out maybe a little bit slower in the 11s, but he was getting better in one-on-ones. Now he's getting better in the 11-on-11s. So the more practices, the more reps he gets, it seems like Mitchell is just getting better and better. And that's really what you want to see out of these rookies here in their first training camp. And speaking of rookies, let's go to the defensive side of the football. Drake, Latu, the man, the jersey that's right over your right shoulder there, incredible. He is still just off to a blazing start to camp. We're halfway through camp, so I don't even think you can call it a start. He's just had a fantastic training camp so far. Every single day, he is getting at least one would-be sack, and a lot of times it's kind of double. You get 2 would-be sacks here out of Latu in the 11-on-11 period. Because I've been saying that, I've been getting this question a lot, and it's, have Bernhard Raimann and Braden Smith taken a step back? Does it really mean that Latu is looking that good, or is it because our tackles are performing bad from Colts fans? And Colts fans, it's not the tackles that are playing bad. Bernhard Raimann and Braden Smith, they look like how they did last year. Latu is just a much better battle to these guys than what we've seen in the past, where every time we say that Latu has a would-be sack, it's all the other reps. Bernhard Raimann is winning against Latu as well. We're just not going to report hey, Bernhard Raimann wins a rep against Latu. People kind of just assume that, same with Braden Smith. Kwity Paye, again, having a stellar camp, and Kwity Paye is up there too, getting would-be sacks almost every single day in camp, which is great to see from Kwity Paye. It looks like he's taking the step that is needed. Now, can he do that in the regular season? We're going to have to see. That's going to be the huge test for Kwity Paye. But Braden Smith is really just in his first few practices of training camp, coming off of that knee surgery, and he's really holding his own. I just think that it's more of a testament to the work that Kwity Paye has put in the offseason and what Latu brings to this defensive line. So it's really been fun to watch these guys go at it. And on the flip side of things, Drake, I think it makes the tackles better. Bernard Ryman and Braden Smith going up against Latu and Pay when they're this fierce and bringing this much tenacity as pass rushers. That's going to make those guys better for when they're going up against the opposition on Sundays.
Yeah, and starting with Pay real quick, he got that 5th-year option. All right, he has had an absolutely fantastic camp. All right, I mean that's something that a lot of people I know that were writing him off. Man, has he played well. And all he's done since coming into the league is improve. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do. I'm really pumped. I think that you might have 10-plus sacks out of Quick Pay in 2024. We'll have to see, though. But, man, every time I see anything from Latu, 3 things. Fluid movement, just everything just connects from point A to the end of the play. Speed, relentless speed. And a ridiculous ability to bend. He contorts his body in a way that just if I'm a big hulking tackle with long arms, he's just going underneath you. Now that also means that if you get your hands on him, you could dirt him. like Andrew said, trust me, Bernard Ryman and Braden Smith have beat the crap out of Latu plenty in camp, but he's also gotten the best of those guys. And as a rookie, that's fantastic. But don't worry about Ryman and Smith. Those guys are just fine. Ryman's on the climb, and Smith has been one of the most consistent right tackles in football.
Yeah, I mean, being at camp multiple days, I really haven't seen anything out of those two that would suggest they've taken a step back or that the offensive line in general is struggling. So Patrick being a menace in the chat as always. Let's keep those up. You're trying to make me laugh here live on camera, but hey, buddy, we really do appreciate it. Drake, I want to talk about a guy that we haven't talked about at all throughout training camp, but it's a guy that's really flying under the radar, but he's having a sneaky good camp, and that's EJ Speed. EJ Speed has been, I would say, again, sneaky good, but in his role, he's been tremendous. He got a would-be sack of Richardson the other day, but where EJ Speed is really shining, it's the place that he really needed to take the biggest step up. That's pass coverage. Yesterday was the perfect example. Josh Downs was going on a deep crosser, probably 35 yards down the field. Left his guy, I think it was Kenny Moore in the coverage, actually broke off Kenny Moore, and Kenny was about a step behind Josh Downs. Was going to be an easy touchdown. And Anthony Richardson, lobs it up there, probably a little bit too high, and it allowed EJ Speed to fly under it and break the pass up. And EJ Speed has made multiple pass breakups, whether it's against Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco. EJ Speed has really stepped up in the pass coverage game. And that's something that we talked about all off season, that if the next step for these linebackers, for Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, they needed to just be better in coverage, because so many teams last year attacked the Colts over the middle of the field because of Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. Their coverage ability just wasn't there. The Colts went out and drafted Jalen Carlisle to be a coverage linebacker for them. But when we've seen EJ Speed out there and in coverage, he has really stepped it up. Is he going to be one of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL? No, I'm not saying that, but he looks much better compared to a season ago.
Yeah, and you need that, because everyone thinks of linebacker and Colts, they think of Zaire Franklin, and then when you do think of EJ Speed, you think of fantastic run defender at linebacker. You don't think of a guy who can make plays in coverage. So that's fantastic to hear, though, because he's probably wanting to stay out there even more snaps than last year. So the fact that he's making even more progress in that area means that he's becoming a more well-rounded linebacker, and that's got to get you excited if you're Gus Bradley, because that just means you can do even more than just run defend with EJ Speed.
Yeah, and it's not just us that have noticed that as well. We've had the offensive players. When you hear the offensive players speak and they're asked, who's really stood out to you in camp on the other side of the ball, a lot of them are talking about EJ Speed. So, and that's not a coincidence. That just kind of shows that I think the leap that EJ Speed has made from last year to this year. Just keep an eye on Speed, especially in the coverage game. I think that could be a sneaky strength for Speed heading into this year. And it might just give him that new extension contention with the Indianapolis Colts as well. Shout out to Truett for the super sticker. Appreciate all of your support, brother, as always. And great to see you here tonight to talk some more Colts football. Drake, let's talk about the safeties. We talked about Justin Simmons for almost half hour. Let's talk about the guys that he'd be potentially replacing. Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas II. They finally made some plays, and maybe it was the Justin Simmons talk that kind of lit a fire underneath them. But on Monday's practice, Nick Cross made his first big play of training camp, made a fantastic interception of Anthony Richardson in the end zone. Richardson, in my opinion, actually threw a really good ball. He was trying to throw it in there, kind of threw it low, so Kylan Granson was diving for it to kind of get it around Nick Cross, and Nick Cross just made a heck of a play, a very athletic diving interception to snag it away from Kylan Granson at the last second. And then Rodney Thomas got on the board with an interception of Joe Flacco. That Rodney Thomas was a lot easier. Joe Flacco was just trying to rifle it in there, and Thomas was able to step in front of it and pick it off. But hey, 2 interceptions by those guys on the day that all the Justin Simmons rumors start to take off. Coincidence? I don't know about that, but if that's what it takes to kind of light a fire under these guys, and you start seeing Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas start playing better because of it, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and it's just so funny, man. Flacco it just doesn't really want to throw anything but a touchdown every time in training.
Right.
Camp. So the fact he threw a pick in the end zone is just so fitting. But it is good. It's good to see them at least making plays, but that's something that I think that the Colts have an issue with, is that you don't get that. Not saying you need to pick every practice, but you don't get consistently good training camp practices out of Cross, but especially out of Thomas, which I think is why we're talking about Justin Simmons. So we'll see if they can keep that up, and if they can, well, then maybe the future is going to be a little bit different than what we're predicting.
Yeah, and it's going to take quite a few more practices and for Nick Cross to make quite a few more plays for that. There's just one interception isn't going to cut it. He needs to start performing like Julian Blackmon to really start to separate himself from the other safeties. So those are all the latest camp updates from the last 3 days of practice. The Colts are back on the practice field tomorrow, Wednesday, and then they have one more practice after that on Friday before they have their first preseason game against the Denver Broncos on Sunday at Lucas Oil Stadium. But with that, Drake, let's talk about some of these position battles and get everyone updated on where things stand. So you can kind of look at the depth chart that was just released today by the Indianapolis Colts for some of that. But again, the depth chart this time of year is just so fluid because really, honestly, if they didn't have to, teams wouldn't put out depth charts. They just kind of have to because of the preseason games upcoming. So we'll give you some more insight into some of these position battles here. And starting with that X wide receiver position. On the depth chart, the Colts listed Alec Pierce or Adonai Mitchell as the starters. And Drake, that's truly how it's been. It really has. Some days Pierce has the better day. Sometimes Mitchell has the better day. And I think what we've seen as well is they're truly splitting the snaps with the starters in 11 on 11. It's pretty much 50-50. Sometimes Mitchell goes first, other times Pierce goes first, but it's really pretty much 50-50. This is a true competition at that X wide receiver spot. And honestly, Drake, it may stay like that into the season where we see these guys really split half and half those reps at the X wide receiver spot, just depending on the type of play, the situation. Honestly, I'd probably be fine with that. It wouldn't be a terrible play to have those guys because their strengths are so different. You can use them quite a bit, each in different ways.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of unique combinations, I think, where you could have both of them on the field at the same time, or splitting reps 50-50. So it's interesting to have them sharing a starting role, but it also kind of makes perfect sense because what have we been saying this whole time when it comes to AP and AD Mitchell? They're probably going to be split 50-50, so that just fits.
If I had to put money on it, I would still put money on Mitchell probably taking the majority of those snaps. But majority, again, you guys got to remember, majority is 51%. So I could really see it being Mitchell taking 65% of those snaps and Pierce getting the other 35 to 40. So Alec Pierce's role with this team, while it may diminish, it's not going to absolutely nothing. And I think that's why they're both listed there as starters. Going to the tight end position, the Colts on the depth chart have Kylan Granson listed as the starting F tight end and Mo Alley Cox as the starting Y inline tight end. Drake, that's what it's been throughout training camp. And it's kind of a testament because Jelani Woods, Drew Ogletree, pretty much been no shows, and each time Jelani Woods gets an opportunity, he just doesn't do anything with it. Like yesterday, Joe Flacco had a fantastic pass in between like 2 or 3 defenders, hit Jelani Woods right in the hands, would have been a touchdown, dropped it. So Jelani Woods is not making the most of these opportunities, and I know fans want to see him be that tight end one for the Colts. He's got to go out there and prove it. So far, Kylan Granson and Mo Alley Cox have been the ones that have gotten the most passes thrown to them by Anthony Richardson and the ones that have produced the most in training camp.
Yeah, and that's a little bit alarming because, the last thing you want Jelani Woods to have issues with at this point is hands. Because you're walking into year 3, okay, and he didn't show that issue in year 1 with 3 different quarterbacks. So it's like, why is he showing this now after a season-long hamstring injury? Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of potholes in Jelani Woods getting back to that square one that he's been getting to. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, like you said, tight end. Holy crap, is it just such an ambiguous position? I mean, until we see, I don't think we can honestly tell our fans this is the clear snap count winner until like week 5 or 6.
Right.
Seriously. I think it's going to be almost a repeat of 2023, but with Kylan Granson probably taking over even more of the receptions. That's my guess.
I think Kylan Granson, unless Jelani Woods does something drastic, yeah. Kylan Granson's your move tight end. And I think it's probably you'll see a bigger, like a closer split between Mo Alley Cox and Drew Ogletree. But to me, I think Jelani Woods is considerably behind Kylan Granson for those move tight end snaps. And it's going to take a big change or big rebound by Jelani Woods for that to change. Running back 2, guys, it's Trey Sermon. There's really no competition there. Trey Sermon has been taking all of the second team reps behind Jonathan Taylor, going in after Taylor. The real competition is for running back 3, because on the depth chart today, again, take it with a grain of salt, but it does mean a little bit. Tyler Goodson listed ahead of Evan Hall, which really hasn't matched what we've seen in camp. We've seen Evan Hall typically go first and be the one that gets the more reps over Tyler Goodson. So does that just mean that competition is really, really close? We'll have to see. But to me, I would still lean Evan Hall.
Yeah, because I just think you've got more to offer with Evan Hall. Not to say Tyler Goodson can't be a decent receiving back, but yeah, going back to Trey Sermon, I think that he's the closest thing to what they have with Zach Moss, and I think they loved that, honestly. So I think that Shane Steichen also trusts him. He had him in Philly too, so that makes sense.
Patrick is absolutely on one tonight.
Yeah. On fire. I love it.
Swing tackle position, Drake, Blake Freeland, and Matt Gonsalves. They've really been rotating. One practice, you'll have Blake Freeland at left tackle, Matt Gonsalves at right, and then the next practice they'll switch. Gonsalves will be at left, Freeland at right. I'd still think that Freeland probably has the edge as that swing tackle, but Gonsalves is right on his heels. And I think, again, if Blake Freeland is asked to come in and be that swing tackle and he really starts to falter, I think Gonsalves is probably that next man up, and the Colts were probably going to hold Freeland on a pretty short leash.
Yeah, and I really do want to give Freeland another shot here because of just the hell that he had to go through last year. But Gonsalves, I think Gonsalves is somebody that they really are high on. Not to say they're not high on Freeland. They're only a round apart from when they were drafted. But the difference is they traded up to get one of those guys and not the other. And they traded up to get Gonsalves. So don't be surprised if, one of the tackles goes down for a game or two. And if they feel like Gonsalves has shown out better, they're going to plug him in so they can get him going.
Exactly. Over to the defensive side of the ball at the Leo spot on the depth chart, Tyquan Lewis is listed as the starter there at Leo, with Leatu Latu actually behind Kwity Paye. Now, those spots, honestly, Drake, I don't think they really matter too much because we've seen Taekwon Lewis and Leatu Latu really rotate at that Leo spot opposite of Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye has been with the starters the whole time, but the other end has either been Taekwon Lewis or Leatu Latu, and it's been a pretty even 50-50 split. And so with Latu only receiving 50% of the snaps at Leo, he is still getting a would-be sack with the first team almost every single day, if not every single day. That kind of just shows you the tear that Leatu Latu has been on here in training camp.
Yeah, and every time you see him getting interviewed by the media, he's just nothing but all smiles. This is a guy that is all ball all the time. And who else do we talk about being that way? His head coach, Shane Steichen. So I think that it's just a perfect fit. He's hitting the ground running like you wanted to, a 15th overall, number 1 overall defender to play. And it looks like everything's just squaring up really well for Latu. And maybe he'll have that Defensive Rookie of the Year campaign. Who knows?
Yeah. And then while Latu is currently listed as a backup, I'd be kind of shocked if Latu wasn't named a starter here. Maybe as early as week 1, but certainly early in the season. If he's not named a starter, Latu is going to be getting starter level snaps there at that Leo spot. We've got another super chat from the CFO, Patrick. Thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support, all your love, man. The menace that you are in the chat is absolutely hilarious. Patrick asks, can't wait for the Cardinals joint practices next week. Based on our conversations pre-draft, I almost wish the Cardinals draft was the Colts draft. Change my mind. Well, first of all, I'd have to look up who the Cardinals 2024 draft class was, because outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., I'd have to take a look and see who all of that was. So let's oh my gosh, they got a lot of guys. So obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. Yes, I think all Colts fans would love to have Marvin Harrison Jr. on the team. And then they had another first-round pick, Darius Robinson. They also took Max Melton, Trey Benson, Isaiah Adams, the offensive tackle from Illinois, Tip Raymond, Elijah Jones, Taylor Dedarian Demerson, a lot of guys that we talked about. Definitely in the pre-draft process, Drake. But I mean, I can at the edge, I would much rather have Leatu Latu over Darius Robinson. Cornerback, sure, you could look up Max Melton. I think he would be a nice addition out there. But Trey Benson, I don't really think the Colts needed to take a running back that high. I would much rather have Matt Gonzalez and Tanner Bortolini over Isaiah Adams. Tip Raymond, yeah, you add a tight end there. I mean, outside of maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. and Max Melton, I don't see a lot of guys that I would have taken over what the Colts took in this draft, especially considering where these guys were taken as well, and who the Colts took around that same area.
Yeah, and I know that I believe Darius Robinson's Chop Robinson, right? Isn't that who? Is it Chop Robinson or
No, Darius Robinson went to Missouri. Chop Robinson is from Penn State.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So, I mean, kind of like you said, I think that the Colts are really going to get a lot out of Leatu Latu. But, I mean, hey, Adonai Mitchell's a hell of a receiving prospect, right? But, of course, I mean, right now, even in some of the camp footage I've seen off and on from Cardinals, Harrison's out there already making their defensive secondary kind of look ridiculous. So we're going to see what he does with the entire NFC. But I think the Colts had a pretty good draft. I really do. 9 players, solid players, right where you needed those positions, especially those first 4 picks they had. I just thought they'd run a tear.
Especially if Leatu Latu ends up turning into a guy that can get you 12 to 15 sacks a year, which isn't out of the possibility.
They haven't had that in years.
They haven't had that since Robert Mathis. So,
yeah.
And that's something that the Colts desperately need. So, Patrick, thank you so much. You've got another super chat because you're absolutely just killing it. You're an absolute menace now with the super chats as well, trying to get Drake as drunk as possible. Patrick asking, how many drinks did Drake have at the meetup? I think it was around 4.
I had three
three
beers.
Three beers,
three tall boys.
Listen, I had four, so I was the one that was slurring my words. No, I'm just kidding. I definitely was not. I was responsible. I was sober. Drove all the way back to Fort Wayne last night, but it was a good time at that meetup at Urban Apples. So next when we do the meetup next year at training camp, everyone make sure to come out. We'll get to talk Colts, have some brews. It was a lot of fun. But let's finish off these position battles here, Drake. At the left outside cornerback spot, it's been Jalen Jones. Dallas Flowers really hasn't taken any snaps away from Jalen Jones. I think that battle is pretty much done. It's going to be Jalen Jones at that starting spot. Free safety, again, Nick Cross has really started to take the lion's share of the free safety snaps. He's kind of been the starter all along. So unless the Colts do go out and sign Justin Simmons, I think it's going to be Nick Cross there. Free safety, strong safety, whatever they place him, Nick Cross is going to be the other safety opposite of Julian Blackmon.
Yeah, and I think that if Nick Cross somehow, Colts fans, ends up starting, okay, just buckle in, just kind of just ride with it, because he hasn't had meaningful starting stretch of games or anything like that. So I do think that if Simmons doesn't get signed, though, man, I'm not going to lie, Andrew, I still think that they're going to sign somebody.
Their line is definitely in the water. We will say that.
It has to be.
Then a kick and punt returner. So far, it's been the veterans who are listed as the starters. At kick return, it's Dallas Flowers. And I think that's kind of what we were expecting. Dallas Flowers, an electric kick returner when he was at that position in 2022, kind of picking up where he left off. Definitely has the lead in the clubhouse to be the Colts kick returner. And then at punt returner, it's currently listed as Josh Downs, but the guy that's been getting the first reps as a punt returner, Drake, in camp, Anthony Gould. Anthony Gould is listed as the backup for both kick return and punt returner. I don't know if he'll be the main kick returner when everything's said and done. He might be back there with Dallas Flowers because they do have two returners, so he might be back there with Flowers. But as far as punt return goes, I think he's going to be out there as the punt returner. Again, remember, Anthony Gould is a former All-American punt returner, and they're going to take Josh Downs off of special teams.
Yeah, and I think that you want Josh Downs to play. I mean, he's going to be one of your main receivers. You want him out there doing most of that. So I think that just fits. Dallas Flowers was a great kick returner. Anthony Gould was a great punt returner. All those things fit all everybody's strengths.
Exactly. So those are the updates on the positions. Obviously, halfway through camp, still a long way to go in these position battles, but we'll make sure to keep you up to date if anything changes every single time we speak with you guys, basically by the practice now for the rest of training camp. Drake will run through the Colts injury report before we let these good people get out of here. Chris Lamont, with his ankle injury, was removed from the physically unable to perform list, and because of that, he was out there on Monday, and actually kind of took his regular spot as the backup nickel to Kenny Moore. So before that, Micah Abraham, the Colts 6th-round pick, was the backup to Kenny Moore at that nickel spot. Now that Lamons is back, Micah Abraham has gone back to that third team. So that's going to be interesting to see if potentially Chris Lamons makes the team over, say, a Micah Abraham or a Jalen Simpson. We'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. Raekwon Davis still on the active non-football injury list, dealing with the high blood pressure. Again, once that does come back down, then he will be active and be out there at practice. Guys that have been missing practice recently include Dio Dangbo, who's missed, I think, now 5 or 6 straight practices with a calf injury. Definitely not helping him in that battle for that defensive end spot. Jalen Carlisle has missed the last few practices with a hip injury, as well as Will Mallory with a hamstring injury. Now, I will say Dio Dangbo has been working off to the side with the trainer, so hopefully he can come back soon. And Will Mallory has been on the bike, really working that hamstring. And then finally, Liam Anderson was another guy who has missed a couple practices. Haven't got an update on what exactly that injury is, but he has been out as well. Titus Leo, though, did return to practice after being carted off the field. He did miss that one practice with the knee injury, but coming back, it looks much scarier than it actually was, Drake. But Titus Leo has been back, no limitations, so good for the defensive end. One final injury, Wesley French, who can really play all over the interior for the Colts, left yesterday's practice with an ankle injury. He really couldn't put any weight on that ankle and did have to be put on the cart and taken back to the locker room. So we'll have to see what Shane Steichen says about that tomorrow. But Wesley French, that honestly could be a decent blow to the interior depth of the Colts offensive line. But it could also mean that if it's serious enough where Wesley French has to go on IR, could mean someone like Danny Pinter is able to sneak onto the roster to add depth to the interior.
Yeah, people forget about Pinter. I mean, he does play center, and I think that Wesley French, like you said, he played some meaningful snaps at center last year. So if he is lost, you've still got more depth, and that, people, is why you keep depth players on your team.
Exactly. So again, not too many major injuries, knock on wood, for the Colts, but we hope it stays that way, especially since camp is already halfway over. But Drake, before we get out of here, obviously the big topic of tonight was Justin Simmons and his potential signing with the Indianapolis Colts. So I'm going to ask you one final question. If you had to put money on it, when all is said and done, do you think Justin Simmons is a Colt? Why or why not?
Usually I would say no, but I think yes. I think they're going to figure out a way to get it done. And why? Because you cannot have your secondary being exposed the way that it was last year. They were one of the worst teams in points allowed per game. Now you've got Lawrence. Now you've got Stroud, who is coming off of a Rookie of the Year performance campaign and just a lot of competition. You can't afford to let a guy like this slip away. They need to make it happen.
I'm right there with you. They need to make it happen, because
100%.
if they don't, there's going to be a gaping hole in that secondary for the Indianapolis Colts. And why leave it up to chance? Because potentially that gaping hole could cost you the division. It could potentially cost you a spot in the playoffs. And if that happens, it's not going to be pretty for the Colts and the people in the front office for the organization. So that's our show for tonight, guys. Really appreciate everyone that joined in tonight. Patrick almost got me with the breaking news saying the Seahawks signed a center. Almost got me on that one. We didn't have the live signing tonight, but maybe Thursday when we're back, we'll have the live signing of Justin Simmons. We'll just have to see. Shout out to our super chats, Patrick and Truitt, and everyone else that joined us here tonight. We really appreciate all of your support. If you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at @Colts_SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, so you never miss an episode. And then if you can't catch us live, no worries. Apple, Spotify, Google, even on YouTube, wherever you listen to us, we're always on there. Make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, the deputy editor of horseshoehuddle.com, he's actually the menace at writing. The hardest working man in Colts media, never stops. Tell the people about all the pieces that you got out there they need to check out.
I just looked at all the ones that I did on safety. I got a little excited, but 3 reasons the Colts need to sign Justin Simmons. I did a piece on Gus Bradley's comments on Nick Cross. And then, of course, there is an NFL analyst out there that believes Anthony Richardson could be a top 5 quarterback this year.
Make sure you go check those out. And because of Drake, I've become a little bit inspired as well. I've upped my writing game. Got some pieces out there on horseshoehuddle.com. Of course, we finished off the Rookie Files series for this year. Jonah Laulu was the final Rookie Files of the year. Fantastic story for Jonah Laulu, and kind of talking about how how his mother's work ethic and everything that she did, all the sacrifices that she made for him and his siblings, really inspired him to become the player and the person that he is today. Make sure you go check that out. Got some pieces out there on, like I said, Anthony Richardson and how he feels that the deep ball is going to be really helpful, extremely successful for the Indianapolis Colts this year. That was a fun article. Of course, we got Latu chasing the starting spot. We got Jonathan Taylor chasing a championship. So we've got a lot of pieces out there on horseshoehuddle.com horseshoehuddle.com. Make sure you go check out the pieces Drake has written, that I've written, and everyone else on our team. We're really hammering home the Colts content for all of you. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Thursday night to talk about what happened at Colts training camp as always, and then talk about what we're going to be watching in this first preseason game as the Colts take on the Denver Broncos. It's going to be a fun episode on Thursday night where we get to talk about an actual football game for the Colts, so you won't want to miss that one. But until then, Colts fans, enjoy the rest of your week. Stay cool out there. It's been pretty toasty here in Indiana, and we'll see you right back here again on Thursday night.